Emily Morgan had always believed in loyalty. She was the kind of woman who stuck to her word, who didn't chase drama or flirt with danger. Her life in Portland, Oregon, was quiet and steady, almost too steady. She lived in a small, cozy townhouse with her longtime boyfriend, Tyler. They had been together for nearly 6 years. He was kind, dependable, and practical. He did the grocery runs without being asked, paid the bills on time, and always made sure her car had gas. On paper, it was a relationship anyone would be lucky to have. But lately, Emily had started to feel like something inside her was slowly falling asleep. There were no more long stares across the room, no more spontaneous kisses, no real passion. Their conversations were mostly about errands, work, or what to make for dinner. Tyler still cared, but it felt like he saw her as part of his routine, not the love of his life. Then, one rainy Thursday afternoon, she stepped into Perch Cafe, a small place on Willow Street nestled between a used bookstore and a flower shop. She had been there before, but that day felt different. Maybe it was the cold outside or the fact that she needed a break from the dull rhythm of her day. She ordered her usual oat milk latte and sat near the window. That's when she noticed him. He sat across the room, tall and quiet, with slightly messy dark hair, a leather journal open beside his coffee, and a calm confidence that didn't need attention. Something about him made her pause. He looked like someone who had lived through storms but still believed in the sun. He caught her glance and offered a half smile, not arrogant, just curious. She looked away quickly, but her heart had already taken notice. His name was Eli Walker, and he wasn't from Portland. He was visiting from New York, taking a break after a messy divorce. They started talking casually, first about coffee, then about how the city felt slower, softer, easier to breathe in. There was something about Eli that made it easy for Emily to let her guard down. He didn't try too hard, didn't push. He just listened in a way that made her feel seen. And when he laughed, it was the kind that made her chest tighten a little. Their conversation lasted almost 2 hours, and yet, she left the cafe that day feeling like she hadn't said enough. That night, Tyler was waiting for her, cooking chicken stir-fry in his usual sweatpants and soft smile. He kissed her cheek, asked about her day, and she nodded, giving him the basics. But inside, her thoughts were tangled up in Eli's voice, the way he looked at her like she was a whole story he wanted to read slowly. She told herself it was nothing, just a spark, just a stranger on a rainy day, but she knew better, because when someone looks at you like you matter, not out of habit, but out of real curiosity, you feel it deep, even if you don't want to. Emily tried to shake it off. She told herself she loved Tyler, and maybe she still did. But love, she was beginning to learn, isn't always enough. Sometimes, it's about how someone makes you feel seen, wanted, alive. And the way Eli had looked at her across that cafe table, it had stirred something inside her that she thought was long gone. She didn't plan to see him again, but the heart rarely sticks to plans. Emily told herself it was just a moment, a one-time thing, a conversation with a stranger that made her feel a little more alive than usual. But days passed, and Eli Walker stayed on her mind. His smile, the way his eyes held her gaze without looking away too soon, the calm in his voice, all of it lingered like a song she couldn't stop humming. She started going back to Perch Cafe more often, pretending it was about the coffee, or the quiet space to think. But deep down, she was hoping he'd be there, and he was. Sometimes with his journal, sometimes with a book. Always alone. Always looking up when she walked in. At first, they kept things light. Small talk, jokes about rainy Portland weather. Then one afternoon, as the sky outside turned silver and soft, he asked her about her life. Not just what she did for work, but what made her feel proud. What scared her. What she dreamed of when no one was watching. It wasn't the kind of question people usually asked. Tyler never asked questions like that anymore. She hesitated, then answered. And just like that, something shifted. Their conversations turned deeper. She started sharing things she hadn't said out loud in years. How she once wanted to move to San Francisco and open a design studio of her own. How she sometimes felt like a supporting character in her own life. How she missed being looked at like she was wanted, not just appreciated. Eli didn't try to fix her. He didn't say all the right things. But he really listened. Something about that made her feel warm in places she thought had gone cold. He opened up told her about his marriage. How it ended not with a scream, but with silence. How two people who once loved each other deeply could somehow forget to look up from their lives long enough to save it. They understood each other, in quiet ways, to people carrying private sadnesses. Drawn to a connection neither of them asked for, but both needed more than they realized. One afternoon, he reached for the sugar jar, and his fingers brushed against hers. It was so brief, so accidental, but her breath caught in her throat. The air between them felt different after that thicker charged. She didn't pull away, neither did he. They just looked at each other for a moment too long. She broke the gaze first, laughing nervously, trying to shake it off. But later that night, back home with Tyler, she couldn't forget the way that touch felt. Tyler was in the living room watching the game. The house smelled like takeout and comfort. Everything was familiar, safe, predictable. And yet, her mind kept drifting to that table at Perch Caf, to Eli's hands, to the quiet way he made her feel seen. A week later, it happened. They were sitting by the window as the rain started to fall. He said something about fate, about how people come into your life when you least expect them. She laughed, said she didn't believe in fate, but then she really looked at him and realized she was already in too deep. She kissed him, just once. It wasn't wild or desperate. It was soft, slow, careful, and it changed everything. As she drove home that night, the guilt sank in, but so did something else. A deep ache she couldn't name. It wasn't just the kiss. It was the truth behind it, the silent message her heart had been trying to say for weeks. She didn't just want more. She needed it. Emily thought the kiss would be enough to wake her up, enough to remind her that what she felt with Eli was a moment, not a path. She told herself it didn't mean anything, that it was just a slip, something born out of loneliness or curiosity. But that was a lie, and she knew it. That single kiss had stirred something too real to ignore. It wasn't just about desire. It was about connection, the kind you don't find twice. Still, she tried to go back to her regular life. She avoided Perch Caf. She ignored Eli's texts, though she read them more than once. She smiled at Tyler, even cooked him dinner on Tuesday, something she hadn't done in a while. He didn't notice anything was wrong. Maybe he didn't want to. Maybe he was too used to thinking everything between them was just fine. But Emily wasn't fine. She was split in two, one half trying to hold on to the life she had built, the other being pulled toward something she didn't fully understand but couldn't stay away from. Eli had become a thought that wouldn't leave her alone. She missed the way he looked at her, like she was still a mystery worth unfolding. She missed the way her voice sounded around him, lighter, braver, more alive. One rainy afternoon, 2 weeks after that kiss, she walked into Perch again. She didn't even plan to. Her feet just led her there. And there he was, same seat, same journal, same quiet pull that made her chest ache. When he looked up, she didn't see anger or disappointment. Just a quiet understanding. She sat down. They didn't speak right away. There was something in the silence between them that said more than words could. Then she whispered, "It was a mistake." He nodded slowly, his fingers running along the rim of his coffee mug. "I know," he said. "But I can't stop thinking about you." She felt that sentence settle deep inside her. It wasn't smooth or dramatic. It was honest. It was real. She told him she loved someone else, that she had a life with Tyler, that she wasn't the kind of woman who strayed. But Eli didn't argue. He didn't beg. He just looked at her, really looked at her, with those steady green eyes that made her feel like the only person in the room. And in that moment, her body betrayed her. It leaned in. Her breath shortened. Her heart began to race. She knew it was wrong. She knew it was dangerous. But she also knew one other thing. This wasn't just temptation. This was connection. And it had been missing from her life for far too long. That night, she went to his apartment. There were no grand speeches, no promises of forever. Just two people who needed each other in that moment. The world outside faded. Time felt like it had paused just for them. And when he kissed her again, it wasn't about lust, it was about being chosen, wanted, understood. It was warm and slow, and full of the kind of aching that only comes when something is both beautiful and impossible. She stayed with him until dawn, curled against his chest, not thinking about tomorrow, only the quiet comfort of now. But by morning, the weight of reality returned. She dressed in silence, kissed his cheek, and left. As she stepped outside into the cold morning air, the guilt hit her hard, but so did the undeniable truth. She didn't regret it. Not because it didn't matter, but because it did. The morning after she left Eli's apartment, Emily felt like she was walking through two different worlds. On the outside, the city looked the same, cars passing by, neighbors walking their dogs, the smell of coffee drifting out of small bakeries. But inside, something had changed. She had crossed a line, and there was no going back. She went home to Tyler, trying to act like nothing had happened. He greeted her with a sleepy smile, wrapped his arms around her, and told her he missed her last night. She nodded, said she had stayed over at a friend's place after a late meeting. And in that moment, she realized just how easy it was to lie to someone who trusted you. But the truth was clawing at her, growing louder every time Tyler kissed her forehead or made her coffee just the way she liked. It hurt more than she expected, not just because she had betrayed him, but because she had lost the part of herself that used to be fully his. Over the next few days, Emily tried to carry on. She went to work, answered emails, met deadlines, but nothing felt real. Everything felt like a scene she was acting out. She didn't reach out to Eli, and he didn't call her either. There was an unspoken understanding between them. They both knew that what had happened couldn't be undone, but neither of them wanted to pretend it didn't matter. It mattered too much. When she was alone, she thought about his hands, the way they had held her so gently, like he knew she was about to break. She thought about how he listened when she spoke, how he looked at her like she was the only thing that existed in that moment. It wasn't just attraction. It was something deeper, something that shook her in ways Tyler never had. 2 weeks later, Tyler found a message on her phone. She had forgotten to delete it. Just a few words from Eli, asking if she was okay. Nothing romantic, nothing dramatic, but Tyler saw it, and he knew. He looked at her with eyes full of confusion and quiet hurt, the kind that doesn't explode, but sinks. "Emily," he said, voice low, almost trembling, "did you sleep with him?" She couldn't speak at first. Her lips parted, but no sound came. And then finally, she nodded. Just once. He didn't yell. He didn't throw anything. He just sat down on the edge of the couch and stared at the floor, like he was watching something fall apart in slow motion. "Was I not enough?" he asked, not with anger, but with heartbreak. And that question, more than anything else, shattered her. "I don't know how to explain it," she whispered. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I just, ... I didn't feel like myself anymore." He didn't ask her to stay, and she didn't beg him to forgive her. They both knew the damage had been done long before Eli came into the picture. She packed a bag that night. No big scene, just a quiet goodbye, and the sound of the front door closing behind her. Emily didn't run straight to Eli. She needed time to think, to feel, to be honest with herself. But a part of her knew, even as she stood under the cold night sky with everything she owned in a single duffel bag, that she would see him again. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. Because when he looked at her, she didn't feel like a mistake. She felt chosen. Yes, she had cheated once, but the way Eli had looked at her, with longing, with tenderness, with everything she thought love had stopped being, she knew she'd do it again. Not out of weakness, but out of a deep, aching desire to feel alive.